What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about cats. So before I even go ahead and share my thoughts on this movie, I think I should go ahead and say that I have zero connection to the Broadway musical that this is based on. I have no connection to the musical, the songs, the characters, the story, nothing. I've never seen it. I've only ever seen images. I've seen some clips, but I've never actually watched a full song in its entirety in a video or anything like that. So I have no connection to it other than just knowing what it is and being a fan of Broadway musicals as a whole, but I have no connection to this play on its own. This is just going to be my take on the movie on its own. I feel like I should also mention that when the trailer came out, I was pretty surprised at the overwhelming negative response that it got, almost a laughable response based on how the movie looked. And for me, when I heard this movie was being made, and then when I actually saw what it looked like, I felt like it was pretty much what I expected. It was pretty much the visual aesthetic that I expected to see. Humanoid cat characters that are dancing and singing in a musical. I don't really know what people were expecting. With that said, let's get into my thoughts on this movie. And the first thing I'll go ahead and say right out of the gate is I didn't hate this movie. I didn't think it was terrible. I think there's a lot of negative talk around this movie. A lot of the reviews are definitely not very positive. And I didn't find this movie to be nearly as bad as what people were saying. With that said, I didn't really find this movie to be all that great either. So like I mentioned, this is a film that's adapted from a stage play, a very famous Broadway musical by the same name, Cats, where you essentially have a story that takes place in a night, from what I understand, that is about cats, and they sing and they dance, and it's people dressed up in cat costumes with makeup, you know, very Broadway. So going into this, I thought it was interesting. I liked how the trailer looked. I liked how the characters looked. I liked the lighting, the setting, the overall aesthetic of the film. As somebody who's a huge fan of sci-fi and fantasy and all kinds of things like that, I saw this and I thought to myself, I really can't make fun of this when so much of what I love is very much like this. People, animal hybrids, and all kinds of weird kind of things like that. I wasn't necessarily turned off. There is a little bit of an off-putting weird look to some of it, especially some of the actors that you'll see in this movie. But for the most part, I found myself enjoying the aesthetic of the film, specifically in the trailer, and I really enjoyed the tone of it set up with the song that Jennifer Hudson is singing in the trailer. So I was really intrigued to see how this movie would end up being. Like I mentioned, this movie is not terrible, but it's definitely not great. I think that the biggest issue that this film had for me was practically a non-existent narrative. There really wasn't much to connect to. The characters really weren't all there. There really wasn't anybody to connect to throughout the film. There's almost no character development in this film outside of maybe one or two characters, and the development that they get is very thin. There's really not a lot of time spent with these characters, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were probably just trying to fit in all these songs from the play, that maybe it works when you watch it as far as the actual musical on stage, but as far as the movie goes, it just keeps going from place to place, singing about this cat and that cat and these cats and those cats and what these cats do. And there is a story to follow. By the end of it, you do know what the story is, but it doesn't have your typical three-act structure or even some sort of interesting three-act structure that really makes you care about these characters. I did find myself quite a number of times throughout the film kind of checking my watch to see what time it was, or checking my phone, I should say, just checking the time in general. I found myself just kind of waiting for this movie to end. I think the biggest issue I had with this film, and I think that's one thing I could definitely agree with when I've seen the negative reviews, is that the story is definitely lacking. The film really just does jump from one place to the next. You have this cat who will come in and they start singing a song about this cat. That cat will then lead the song, tell you everything you need to know about that cat by the end of the song. The other cats that are around them will be singing with them and kind of just adding on to the song about this cat. And then that person, that character, that was, a lot of them were played by very famous actors or famous people, yeah, they would kind of just go away. They'd be gone. They'd maybe show up 15, 20 minutes later, or they show up at the finale of the film. And that's kind of how this film was. You have these characters that were played by very popular people that would pop up, they'd sing a song about them, they'd sing some sort of song about what kind of role they play in this world of cats, and then they would leave. And you really had no time to develop with a lot of these characters. And I think that's my biggest issue with this movie 100%. Despite any issues I may have had with other things, if I cannot connect to the story or the characters, what am I watching the movie for? I think my biggest positive that I can give this film are the performances. All the performances in this film are really, really well done, specifically from the main actress, Francesca Hayward, I believe her name is. And she just plays like the white cat that you see in all of the marketing. She does a really good job of evoking a lot of emotion, and she definitely has the facial reaction and the eyes that really draw you into her character. I found her to be the most intriguing character and the cat that I caught myself watching the most anytime she was on screen, even if she was just in the background. And I mean, that makes sense. she is the central cat of the film. So I think that they definitely cast somebody who has this sense of wonder in their face and is able to emote that very, very well. So I did really enjoy her. I also really enjoyed Jennifer Hudson's performance in this film. But again, even with these performances I really did enjoy, these characters were not given a lot of development to really get you attached to anything that they are, who they are, what they do, anything like that. And so that was definitely my most frustrating part, because you also have a lot of really great performances in this movie, like Ian McKellen, who does some really weird stuff in this movie. It's kind of weird to see some of the stuff he does in this movie. But also like Judi Dench, you have Jason Derulo, you have Taylor Swift, who sometimes her accent was a little weird at times, but you just have so many actors that keep showing up. James Corden, Rebel Wilson, so many actors that you'll recognize, and they're doing a good job for whatever script that they had. The songs that they're singing, they sound good. The vocal performances were good. The choreography in this film, as far as the dancing, I found to be a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that, because I am a fan of musicals. I have gone to plenty of stage plays. My mom grew up loving this kind of stuff, so she definitely implemented that into me. She's definitely a bigger fan of this kind of stuff, but I definitely enjoy it. So when I watch this kind of stuff, I enjoy the dancing, I enjoy the singing, I enjoy the songs. And that was another thing, is that there are some really good songs in this film, specifically one sung by Francesca Hayward's character, as well as Jennifer Hudson's character near the end of the film, where they're really powerful vocal performances and there is emotion behind their characters. I just wish I cared more about them and their story, because there really wasn't a story there. There is a story, but it's very, very subtle, and it's really not until like the last 30-40 minutes of the film that I felt that they were really developing what would be the end of the film. Whereas the first half of the film for me was just, let's go to this place, let's introduce this character, let's go to that place, introduce this character, and it was just songs that weren't bad, you know. They were songs that weren't necessarily songs I want to listen to in the car. They weren't those kind of musical songs, but they were songs that kind of just told you about these characters and were kind of done in a fun and whimsical way, but there were nothing that I really connected to. There's only probably like 2 songs in here that I found myself actually really into as I was watching, specifically the one I mentioned that you'll see in the trailer if you've seen this movie, but that Jennifer Hudson sings. I think she just does a great job of evoking a lot of emotion and really selling you on the song and her character overall. I just wish we had so much more time with these characters, because you have all these incredible actors and you just don't really have time to spend with them, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be negative about this movie, because there's enough of that on the internet already, but I do have to agree with a lot of the criticisms that people have given this film, as far as the narrative structure and just the overall care for the characters that you'll have by the end of it. So let's get into the visuals of this film. I think that's definitely the thing that people are talking about the most when it comes to this. There's a lot of negativity about it, and there's also kind of just a lot of mixed feelings. And what I can say about the film is I really enjoyed the aesthetic of this film for the most part. Now, when I say that, I mean I enjoyed what they were going for. There's something about the look of the characters that I really enjoyed. I like the idea of seeing these cats that were humans, you know, like they had human hands, human feet, and human faces while having cat features everywhere else. And I liked the way that they moved a lot of times. I enjoyed everybody acting like a cat. There was a silliness to it and kind of a weirdness to it, but I was into that. Now, I do recognize that's not going to work for everybody. This movie is weird. Like, if you've seen the trailers and if you have seen anything from this movie and you think that is not for me, it's probably not for you. But if you're like me and saw that first trailer and thought, this actually looked kind of interesting, you may end up enjoying yourself more than you think. I really had a good time with the visuals of this film. There are a lot of times with the lighting and the overall aesthetic outside of the cats themselves that I really did enjoy. And there's a lot of really close-up great shots where you get to see a lot of detail on the fur and just their face and the whiskers that I really did enjoy. Now, it is a little weird. It is a little off-putting at times. However, I did find myself enjoying a lot of the visuals. Now, with that said, there are some visuals in this film, some of the CGI that is pretty bad. I think there's just no way I can objectively disagree with that. There's specifically a sequence that has to do with mice and cockroaches, where it's some of the worst CG you've seen in the film, and it's some of the worst CG I've seen in a modern film in quite some time, if not in this whole decade as a whole. I was really surprised by some of the bad CG in this film, to be honest, because when I saw the trailers, I didn't agree that it was as bad as people were saying. I kind of felt like it was okay to have this film have CG that's kind of cartoony, that it was kind of just kind of silly looking, because, again, it's a fucking movie about people that are dancing and singing that are cats, you know what I mean? Like, they're cats, but they look like people. Like, I already kind of knew what I was walking into, so I can't really judge it too much, knowing that it's already a kind of a silly premise. Now, with all that said, there are some moments with the actual cats that definitely don't look great. There's quite a few moments that I found myself thinking, that is 100% unfinished. There are moments where you'll see their hands and they're all the way up to their knuckles, and the top of their hands will be completely cat-like, you know, fur and all that kind of stuff. And then they'd be moving and singing and dancing, and you could watch it kind of like shifting, like the actual effect would be shifting. Same thing with their face. There was times where it was really close-up shots that they looked crisp, beautiful. They looked like cats. The whiskers and everything looked good. The CG looked like, you know, you have this humanoid cat person. But then there's times where they'd have wide shots where you could see them moving their faces, and the cat effect around their face, around the human face, would be kind of disappearing. It would not be there. It would kind of just be like fading away as they moved and sang and turned in different directions. So there's a lot of moments where I have to objectively just say the CG just was not finished. It just is what it is, you know what I mean? And there's moments where it looks really good, and then there's moments where it doesn't. So you have this visual inconsistency as far as the CGI that definitely I have to talk about, you know what I mean? Which is upsetting, because I think if there was anything that could have been going for this movie, it was the CGI. I think they could have done something really cool with this just weird human-cat hybrid thing. Whether some people liked it or some people didn't like it, I think had they gone full force and making sure that these characters all looked top-notch as far as the CG, you could have at least had something really interesting looking. And there are times it looks good, there's times it looks solid, nothing out of this world, but I enjoyed it. But there were so many moments that I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, that looks unfinished. Or I would just be watching, I'm like, did half of their cat face just disappear and it just looks like a regular person there for a second, and then the cat face would appear again? That's literally what happened in this movie, so I found myself kind of surprised that it was that bad at times. With all that said, guys, this is not a film that I have to go ahead and recommend you run to theaters to see. I think if you watch this on Netflix or Redbox, check it out. If you have something like AMC A-List like I do, where you can watch 3 movies a week, I don't think it's harmful to go check it out. This is harmless. This is a harmless watch. You know what I mean? This is kind of just a silly, go ahead and check it out. This is nothing crazy out of this world. I think even if you don't like it, there's an interesting and funny conversation that can be had about this movie. I think there's a lot of negativity about this movie that doesn't really necessarily hold water for me. And there's definitely some things that I definitely agree with when it comes down to the criticisms that this film has been spawning. On an overall level, this movie was just it really didn't grip me story-wise, but there was a lot visually and some of the performances that I really enjoyed. I don't really know when I'll rewatch this movie, if at all. I don't really, again, think that this is a movie that I gotta go ahead and say, oh, you need to go check it out. If you choose to skip this movie for the rest of time, I don't really think you're missing too much. And the main reason I say that is because there isn't a narrative to really grip to. I will defend a film that has bad special effects or bad performances even at times if it has a story that's compelling, interesting, or fun. And this film just didn't have that element for me. The narrative is where it lost me, because there really wasn't one. By the time the halfway point of the film came around, I just didn't know what was happening as far as like where the story was going, and I just didn't care. There is a story. By the end of it, you can see the through line of what the story was, but a lot of it is just wasted on singing about cats that don't have a lot of screen time. And again, I've never seen the play. Maybe that's how it is, but as far as a film and adapting it to screen, it just didn't do it for me. So yeah, guys, that's going to be my thoughts on Cats. I don't think it's terrible. I think if you like it, I can totally understand why some people will and some people won't. I think there's some great choreography, some really cool special effects at times, though a lot of it at times is not great. And, you know, you have really great performances in this. I think that there's a lot of really great actors that you should definitely check it out just for them. But outside of that, yeah, it's a movie about cats dancing and singing, and there's really not much to the story, and that's the part that bums me out the most. So yeah, guys, leave me your comments down below. Did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie? Did you think it was ass? Did you think it was cool? Leave me all those comments down below, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for watching. Thank you guys again for supporting this channel each and every day. I appreciate you all, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.